John.
Getting better, getting better. Okay, so we're gonna. Oh, I forgot to do one key thing.
House with snakes and bugs and so
Was it open to the back?
no, but this is
Oh,
funny.
Hey, somebody's not muted. Okay, now I'm ready to share. And we're off. So this is our itinerary, which I am not going to do today, but at least I wanted as an introduction to show you where we went, so that as I'm going to go over the chronological history of Spain, which is not the the order in which our trip was. But just so you know, we basically did the western half of Spain. We'd done Barcelona before, and that was Madrid and Escorial, which is nearby, which we'll get to when we talk about Philip II. Toledo, which was really the first a major defensive city on the peninsula, quite historic and a UNESCO site. It's great. And then Cordova, perhaps my favorite stop. Um, uh, Seville, actually, we did before Cordova, and I'll explain why they're kind of linked together. There's a river that joins the two. Then Granada, location of some amazing Muslim architecture. And then Malaga, where we kind of cooled out, but it was an early Roman settlement. But we were basically there for R&R. We have a neighbor who has relatives there. He joined us. Um, our oldest son, Jeremy, took over in Lisbon. Um, and uh, then from Lisbon, we went uh, to Porto, a beautiful historic city. Then up to Spain. Um, then Compostela de Santiago, an amazing history, and it's the destination of the Great Pilgrimage. And then this was a surprise to me in eastern Galicia. So this is all of Galicia, is the Tower of Hercules. So that's where that is. And then we got into Basque country, and the Basque is the amazing history. It was the end of our trip, but it's really at the beginning of the history of the peninsula, as you will soon see. That's kind of where we're going to start. The ancient Basque people who have a language unrelated to anything, possibly Hungarian or Finnish, um, but not clear. So that's and this was just breaking it down who was with us, but I'm not going to go into detail. Maybe if we get to doing a travel log, we'll do that. But chronological history, beginning with the Basques, and you can't get any older than this. The Altamira cave was in use for 36,000 years, leaving some kind of cave art behind. But it reached a spectacular peak with these polychrome uh, paintings on the ceiling. These are from about 15,000 years ago. The Altamira cave itself is closed off. Why? Because of carbon dioxide that human beings exhale, which acidified and was starting to ruin some of the paintings. So it's carefully preserved, but God bless them, they did a replica of the cave that you walk through. And you certainly get the feeling, the claustrophobic feeling of being in a cave. All right, so the Basques, they're number one. They were there first, but in come a lot of other people onto the scene. And the one that's most fascinating to me is the Celtic area in northern Spain. And the Celts arrived there maybe around 900 BC. And there's to this day a remnant called Galicia, as in Gallic. And just remember the Celts started in Austria and worked their way west across Europe until they ran out of land and encountered the sea. Interesting fact, bagpipes are played to this day. I'll show you a picture. And the Castro family, Fidel Castro's family was from Galicia. And there was a rumor that Castro himself may have been of Jewish heritage, a converso. And why would Jews be all the way up in this corner of Spain? To get as far away from Madrid and the Inquisition as possible. Here's the bagpipe encountered in Santiago de Compostela. So Santiago is the Spanish word for James. And so we have a San Diego, but it's the same idea. It's Saint James, who was an apostle. And perhaps we'll get to a James story later, but not in the first go round of the history. That'll be a refinement if we want to. And De Compostela, what does that mean? Field of stars, field of stars. So Mike and I went to a concert at our local Unitarian church that puts on these concerts. And the guest guitar player and musician, he played about 6 musical instruments that night. And he had a song called Compostela, the Field of Stars. I mentioned the Tower of Hercules, and here it is. It's on the eastern part of Galicia, and legend holds that this is a historic spot. You see that it jets out into the ocean, and you'd see why you would need a lighthouse here with all these rocks. So it was mythologically a way station of the Celts on their way to Ireland. So they stopped here first, and then they went to Ireland. And that's the myth of King Breogan. The lighthouse itself survived for quite a while when Rome was controlling this part of the world. So a very historic lighthouse. All right. So leaving Galicia up in the corner for now, let's get to who settled the Mediterranean part. Well, first it was the Phoenicians, and they were Semitic seafarers. So their alphabet, the first alphabet, it was a Semitic phonetic alphabet. And so they settled, first they got to Carthage, which was a Phoenician colony always. And later on, the nickname was Punic. So when you hear Punic, that's Phoenicia, that's Carthage. Um, and Hello, Rudy. Uh, Good to have you from New Jersey, where he's visiting his mom. Um, so they settled here, the southeastern part of Spain. But notice they got all the way up to the British Isles, where they mined tin. Cornwall being rich in tin deposits, which was part of the metallurgy that the peninsula was well known for being a metallurgic center. All right, so that's the Phoenicians. Um, and then Hispania is a Phoenician word meaning land of rabbits or the land where metals are forged. The Romans adapted Hispania, where they learned it from the Carthaginian settlers, and that eventually evolved into the name of the political unit, España. And of course, we use Hispanic all the time here in California. Although in California, it's evolved to Latino, Hispania kind of being reserved for the East Coast. Um, so then came the Greeks. So this is blue. They focused mostly in the northeast corner, where they had their biggest settlement. Um, they also settled in Cadiz, which is right near the Rock of Gibraltar. Um, the word Iberia comes from the Greeks, and it's used more as a geographic word, whereas Hispania is more adjective than that. And the word itself comes from the name of the river, which is the current Ebro River, but at one time it was the Iberias River. Um, so Carthage, an empire, and notice that they settled parts of Sicily and Sardinia, um, uh, and they had named a city Cartagena, and we have many versions of Cartagena. One is in Colombia, where we spent one Christmas with our in-laws, who are Colombian. Cartagena is derived from Carthage. So then comes a challenger, Rome, and they're going to fight the First and Second Punic wars. And it was famous. Spain was a launching pad in those wars, most famously by Hannibal, who marched his elephants up through Spain and in through the Alps, and then down into the plain of northern Rome, where he ultimately outdistanced his supply lines, which was a real problem when it comes to feeding elephants. So Rome defeated Carthage and got a foothold in eastern Spain. when we were in Malaga, it's the location of some very well preserved Roman ruins, which Aiko and I had a chance to visit in detail. Note Mallorca. You all remember Mallorca as the birthplace of Junipero Serra, and
Right.
it was also the home of many missionaries that went to California to try to convert the natives. It was just a cultural trait of Mallorca. Um, so it was controlled by Rome early on. So finally, you had this great consolidation of Roman power, beginning with Augustus. Quite impressive. Um, and then the main cities are Tarragona, which is not at all far from Barcelona. Aiko and I visited that in an earlier trip to Barcelona. Um, the uh, Romans left impressive ruins. I think this is the most impressive, which is in southern France, and an aqueduct to carry water to a Roman city. I'm not familiar with Nemesis. Um, but Spain was became the breadbasket after Carthage. It had been the breadbasket until the Romans conquered it and famously salted the fields of Carthage. If you remember the movie Patton, when Patton is attacking the Germans in North Africa, and he finds the ruins of Carthage, and starts talking about he was there, right? Because he believes in um, uh, uh, when you're born again.
Reincarnation.
Thank you. Reincarnation. He's musing about when he was reincarnated earlier as a warrior that fought in the Punic Wars. So livestock, grain, of course, olive oil. They also produced famous people like the Emperor Trajan. He hailed from the Spanish peninsula, as did Seneca. He was from Cordova. And you were going to hear a lot about Cordova, but Cordova was an important city, Roman city, and so we saw this statue outside the gates at Cordova. So here's something I learned. I had never heard of a river Quadavira. And you can see it goes, Cordova is situated on, it was founded there because of the river. There's a famous Roman bridge in Cordova, and it was navigable all the way from the sea, which made it desirable for the Romans. And it stayed navigable all the way to the 16th century, but then it silted in, and boats from the sea could only go as far as Seville. And the you'd say, well, why would boats go all the way into Seville? Once the New World was discovered, Seville was the port of call. It's where all the administration of the empire was. And why? Why not on the coast? And the answer is for protection, for security against pirates and raiders. Such were the times that it was worth it to go all the way upriver and set up forts along the river to take pot shots at any invaders. So we visited Sevilla too, and it's very, very impressive city. So Christianity comes with Constantine, and one of his advisors is the Bishop of Cordoba. Sometimes it's Cordoba, sometimes it's Cordova, same place. And this is the beginning of Catholicism, which will become a major driver of Spanish history all the way to 1970 when Franco dies. And since then, the Spanish have beat a hasty retreat from a rigid Catholicism, just like the Irish have, actually. Interesting parallel. So that's Christianity. And then the Rome runs out of road, runs out of gas. The barbarians come. Among them are the Vandals, which get the furthest down, Germanic tribes. And then one more Germanic tribe, the Visigoths, which divert to Rome, but then move on to Spain, where they set up an empire. The Visigoth Empire lasts a couple of hundred years, and they set up in Toledo. And I'm going to talk a lot about Toledo. It's a major defensive city. So Cordova had the advantage of being on a river, and Toledo had the advantage of being on one big, huge hill, which gave it a tremendous advantage in defense. And I'm going to talk more about it. One thing about the Visigoths, they were anti-Semitic, rabidly anti-Semitic. They did preserve Roman law and institutions, but note there's a northern corridor. This northern corridor is protected by mountains. And this northern corridor is going to come up again and again in our discussions. So Toledo's on this hilltop. This is as it appears today, populated ever since the Roman and Visigoths and the Moors took advantage of this gigantic hill. And then in the 16th century, this Alcazar of Toledo was built. Now it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's very well preserved and protected behind the wall. And they did something very ingenious to keep cars from going up there. The cars are parked down below, and you take this huge series of escalators all the way to the top. We saw it in Lisbon too, interestingly enough. And of course, San Francisco has its own version in cable cars, not quite. Both are open air, but the escalators are a little bit more convenient because they're running all the time. UNESCO makes sure of that, the incentive of UNESCO. And so the Visigoths last a couple of hundred years, but the Moors look north and say that looks interesting over there, and they were, of course, welcomed by the Jews who had been oppressed by the Visigoths, And besides, the Moors were fellow Semites. So a part of an interesting story. So this warlord makes it up there. And the last Visigoth warlord is defeated. And the religious zeal of the Arabs in North Africa takes it all the way up to the top, except there is still one minor exception. It's called El Andalus, and why? Well, the leading theory is that it somehow is derived from Vandals, that first Germanic tribe that got down to the Mediterranean. The alternative hypothesis is that it comes from Atlantic. So who knows? But forever, the part of Spain that was occupied by the Muslim is called El Andalus. And even today, it's used to describe the southernmost provinces. They had a tenuous hold in the north, but they didn't really settle the north. So this is all green, but it really wasn't settled. And in particular, they didn't even get a foothold in Asturias. But what's it like to hold land for a long time and claim it, but never settle it? Well, we should know, because that's what the Spanish did with California for 240 years or 30 years. So from 1540 to 1769, when Junipero came. And settled it in San Diego, which is a nice segue to Santiago de Compostela and the corridor that remained up here. And when the Muslims conquered most of the peninsula, Christians started praying that someday they would leave. And so the one safe place to make a pilgrimage was in this northern corridor from France, where Charles Martel stopped the Muslims, turned them back. Was it Toulouse? I'm not sure. But this was the third most popular pilgrimage from France, a holy site in France, all the way across to Santiago de Compostela. Santiago, the Field of Stars. And Field of Stars refers to a supernatural lighting of a tomb in the 8th century that, and this is the myth of Compostela, which people decided was the tomb of James, the disciple James, who had been to Spain. And the myth is that he died there, and he was buried there and lost to posterity for 700 years, and then finally lit up by a field of stars and moved finally to the cathedral where St. James is buried in Santiago. Yeah, Bob.
What about the connection of St. James, Santiago de Compostela, and the pilgrimage routes which are marked with shells? Did I not hear once that James appeared out of the sea close to Santiago de Compostela with shells?
Well, thanks, Bob.
Putting him in from that time on, that's marked the pilgrimage trail.
thanks for asking, because here's the story, um, by popular demand. So James died in the Holy Land, and it was his disciples and followers got word that God wanted him to be buried where he had been a missionary. So somehow a boat appears off the coast. And people believe this. And the followers took James' body into the boat, which sort of miraculously navigated all across east, west to across the Mediterranean and out through the stormy port of Gibraltar and up the coast. And as they were approaching the north western part of Spain, they encountered another boat that had a wedding party on it. And they waved at the other boat. They were always looking for pagans to convert, and so they were waved at the other boat, and the groom waved at the boat too, from his wedding party's boat, but he fell into the ocean, and the followers of James dove into the ocean and grabbed him and pulled him up into their boat, and they weren't sure he was going to make it, so they figured they had to baptize him. So he'd been so deep and underwater that he had some shells clinging to his garment. And they said, well, let's take this shell and scoop up some water and baptize him so he'll die a Christian. And that's where the scallop shells come into the story. And the whole distance across the corridor is the trail is marked by the insignia of scallop shells. Yeah, Bob.
Well, in fact, there are multiple routes through Europe down to the classic pilgrimage trail through northern Spain to Santiago de Compostela. Even in the Grand Place in Brussels, you can find the inlaid into the cobblestones polished brass shells, which are marked
Really?
the beginning of that route. And all through France, Western France, you'll find various cities claiming to be the start of the pilgrimage route.
Yeah. So
In Paris, of course, you can eat coquilles Saint-Jacques, which are St. James shells. No, it's a shellfish dish, very famous in France.
thank you. That's a nice wrinkle. Yeah, there were a lot of trails that led, but the final common pathway was across one trail. Now, I'm listening to a book on the trail, and I learned about this book by watching the movie called The Way. If you haven't seen it and you're interested in pilgrimages and it's a movie with Martin Sheen, who plays the father, and his son has started the pilgrimage, but he dies in France. And Martin Sheen comes over to claim the body and decides, I'm going to finish the walk for my son. The movie was conceived and directed by his good son, Emilio de Estevez, not Charlie. And it's a very good movie. It captures the spirit, but you learn about all the vagaries of the trip across. Um,
Well,
and sometimes the trail divides and you can go a little bit one way and a little bit the other, but the thrust of it is across the top near the water.
so when I was in Paris, I worked a year at Cochin Hospital in Paris on the Rue Faubourg Saint-Jacques. It's the start of the trail from Paris to uh, Compostela. The
Wow, that's cool.
street is named Saint-Jacques, Faubourg Saint-Jacques.
Okay, I'm liking this. I'm learning a lot. All right. So then now we get into the consolidation of the Muslim uh, and the empire, and the first center is the Emirate of Cordoba, which later becomes the caliphate as it becomes more powerful. And just to review, Cordoba, this Guadalquivir River was not silted in. And that's why there's a Roman bridge up in Cordoba, which we walked across. And we happened to be there during Samanta Sana uh, Semana Santa, the Holy Week, and the processions that we saw, particularly in Seville, and but also in Cordoba, just a magnificent procession with floats and with music. And we're standing on the Roman bridge in Cordoba as the procession winds along the street at the foot of the bridge into the major cathedral there. It was quite moving. And when I get to the travelogue part of the trip, because I might just recapture I'm always going to stay with the chronological history, but when we get to that part, we have some pretty impressive photos that Aiko and that this leg of the trip we were with our youngest son Tim. Um, so the golden age. So this warms the heart when you read about and hear about Cordova and its at the height of its power, how it was tolerant, it was ecumenical. Jews and Christians and Muslim scholars got along. Um, I hope it's true. I really hope it's true. They worked on translations from earlier texts. Um, uh, and remember, the Old Testament is as much part of Islam as it is for Christians. And so there was that commonality. Special advisors, people of the book. Um, and here you have famous scholars, most famous Maimonides, who were familiar with in medicine. Um, and here is the Jewish Museum in Cordova, where we spent hours in this museum, and there's a statue of Maimonides outside the museum. A flourishing of the arts, the richness of the merging cultures, um, water management. They were excellent. The Romans were too. Uh, but so were the Muslims. And it wasn't just irrigation and drinking water. It was their fountains. This particular fountain is just spectacular. Gravity fed, and the it spouts out at different places, and it tells the time. This is looking down on it, a clock. Somehow it told time. I
Sundial.
can't, I can't explain how, but
Is it not a sundial?
no, it was water. It
Well,
was it
The,
was
the, the water spouted at particular hours as it went around, and it went around the clock. It went around the round dish, John, I believe. They had
yeah,
particular spouts,
yeah, exactly. Each hour had a spout.
right?
Um, so, all right. So nothing, no golden age lasts forever. And uh, Cordova broke down into what are called taifa, which are just the regional districts. And the leading taifa was Toledo. And uh, notice there's no Madrid. Okay. There's not going to be Madrid for quite a while. Um, so once the Muslims show signs of disunity and break down into little kingdoms, the resistance grows in the north. So rather than this thin coastal corridor, all of a sudden you have kingdoms growing south. And here's Catalan, which will become Barcelona. Here's Aragon, which will partner with Castile. But Castile is the main one. Keep your eye on Castile. Um, Navarre is going to kind of get crunched, and Leon is going to disappear back into Galicia. Um, so the first to fall is Toledo, and it's conquered by Alfonso VI of Leon and Castile, both kingdoms. And he was considered the emperor of two religions then. And as a gesture to the Muslim population of the city, he promised them that they could keep their property and they could keep their place of worship. It's controversial on how long that lasted. It may not have lasted more than a year, but you hear about it, the golden age of Toledo, and it gets folded in, and whether it's a myth or not, a concept known as la convivencia, the coexistence of Jews, Christians, and Muslims. And they do, for a while at least, the same thing that they did in Cordova. And that was Toledo. The Again, there's a strong Jewish presence, Jewish museum there as well. And they were one out of every seventh in the population of Toledo. Now, later on, well, no, I'm going to save that. I'm going to save that. So, sure, they got along well, but Christians and Jews under Muslim rule did have to pay a higher tax rate. And the I'm going to skip some of this. The La Convencia says a place of religious tolerance, and it's certainly in contrast in later periods like Ferdinand and Isabella when we're going to get into the Inquisition. So some scholars downplay that era. So the aggressiveness of the northern Christian kingdoms, one big player is a man nicknamed El Cid, who was nimble. He tolerated all sides, but mainly so he could play them off one against the other. He eventually settles down. And of course, there was the movie with Charlton Heston and Sophia Loren. And based on El Cid's real name was Rodrigo Diaz de Vivar. And it was quite a movie. There's also a mini series that is more realistic and much longer, multiple episodes available with subtitles. So there's a consolidation, Aragon, Castile, and then a local warlord decides to take his case to the Pope, and the Pope says, "Okay, you can have your own nation." And Portugal was born. It disappeared for a short while later on, but it's persisted. So the Muslims don't take this laying down. There's an infusion of Muslim energy in the person of the Berbers, and they put off Reconquista. So Reconquista is the term for when these northern Christian kingdoms start feeling their oats and spreading south. So this is the Almohad Caliphate. There's this great Spanish director, Aldo Movar. I always thought that was kind of an interesting name, but I think it has to do with derived from a Moorish name. So the decisive battle was in 1212, and the Almohads were defeated. And where was this battle? Right here. And so the Muslims eventually retreat, and finally they hold Granada and Malaga for an additional 200 years, just as a remnant state. And these are a series of Muslim rulers in Granada, which is a beautiful city. And they have the, help me, Aiko, the Alhambra.
Yeah.
They have the Alhambra. Then comes Ferdinand and Isabella. It should be Isabella and Ferdinand, because she was the one. She wore a suit of armor, not to fight, but to show her martial spirit to her troops. And her story, Aiko and I were enchanted by this, the way that this woman, Eva Schubert, delivered the tale of Isabella's life story. It was really quite something, the arc of her biography. Once the Muslims were in retreat, uh, uh, conquered territory, some Jews and Muslims converted to Christianity. But the Pope doubted the sincerity of that and started the Inquisition. By the way, Junipero Serra served 9 years for the Inquisition in Mexico City before he came up to found California. Um, the interesting history, every once in a while, I saw a story that a trunk in New Mexico was opened and they found hidden Jewish vestments that was part of the conversos, those who had converted, used for private worship. Um, Currently, the term is not Moranus, but crypto-Jewish practice. So the Inquisition tried to root them out, and here you see a trial, and the accused are forced to wear these what look like dunce hats. And we saw these hats everywhere during Semana Santa, particularly in Seville. So I don't know why it was so strong in Seville, but it's part of every procession. People donned these hats as an act of penance, that admitting that they had not been pure Christians themselves, and that Semana Santa and Jesus is about to be born again, and we're going to try harder to redouble our efforts. I guess that's what they were saying, because when I get to the travelogue part, Aiko took some amazing pictures of them. And the garb that they use, uh, uh, you can't help as an American to think of the Ku Klux Klan.
That's right.
It was creepy for about 3 or 4 hours, and then you just finally, okay, they're penitents. They're not uh, bigots. So the uh, there was some interesting literature I stumbled on, an Ashkenazi term, and this is not a slur. It's the Pentelia Yid. It means the Jewish spark. That literally there's a Jewish spark that remains no matter how they're discriminated against and told to convert. Um, and there was even movements, this one in Amsterdam, claiming that the Messiah had been born in the community in Amsterdam, also in Hamburg. Moranos is a term applied to Spanish and Portuguese Jews who converted to Christianity, but continued their ancient beliefs. And same point. And the Inquisition is probably a good place to stop. So we'll throw it open to more comments and conversation.
Hey, John, it's Pepper. The one thing you haven't mentioned is geography a little bit, but there's a big mountain range between Spain and France, that the Andalusians, which I think played a part in keeping that line. And as you say, the northern corridor via Bilbao went along the water there, and but just to say that it's not easy to get from Spain to France in most of that border
The
because of the
Pyrenees.
Yeah,
sorry, the Pyrenees. Thank you.
yeah, the Pyrenees, and that was in the movie The Way with Martin Sheen. That's where his son dies crossing the Pyrenees.
Right.
Yeah, Tom.
Question for you. This you might want to discuss this during your travelogue, but how did you like the Basque food?
San Sebastian is the capital of Spanish cuisine. I think, verify that San Sebastian was the best. We didn't spend the night in Bilbao, but yeah, and I think it's acknowledged by the rest of Spain that San Sebastian's the leading uh, uh, contender.
I went to a cooking school there too. It was fun.
Yeah, I'm the beneficiary of that. Yeah, Michael.
What determines the border between Portugal and Spain? How does that border come to be? Because when I look at a map, it's this very crooked line. Is it a mountain range or what is it? A river?
No, I mean nothing major that we could see. It was just the territory that a particular warlord had came under his control, and at a moment of time, the Pope blessed it, and there was Portugal.
But they also have a separate language, don't they?
Yeah, yeah.
It's not Spanish.
No, Portuguese, which our youngest son, Tim, he learned that by living in Brazil a year.
2 years.
2 years. Thank you. Yeah. So
You mentioned the Alhambra. That is one of the most captivating, beautiful places I've ever visited. The
Yeah, we visited there.
yeah.
yeah, interesting side story. Martinez, they have Alhambra Creek, right? But originally, the Spanish name for the creek was the Creek de Hombre, hunger. The Spanish explorers that were coming from San Francisco in the early days. By the time they got to that creek, which now runs through the center of Martinez, they had run out of food. So they called it the Creek of Hunger. John Muir's wife hated the name of the creek that she lived on. She didn't want to call it the Creek of Hunger anymore. Why? Because John Muir was growing vegetables and fruits. And so they said, let's call it the Alhambra. So it's the Alhambra Creek. Sounds like Del Ombra.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go. A little local color. Okay.
All right.
So, I'll talk to Bruce. Well, I'll probably want to continue this next week and get it all done. Bruce, why don't you hang around at the end? Yeah.
One thing, the penitentes with their pointed hats and robes, they weren't like in that cartoon. That cartoon made it look like it was newspaper or something. But they had these, velvet robes and velvet hats, and they were in black and white and maroon and blue and all different deeper colors, but just really nice looking.
You got used to it. Okay.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
took your socks and shoes off.
So, Bruce,
Yo, I'm just looking at my calendar, as a matter of fact, to see uh, next week is theoretically I'm on, right?
well, I was thinking that, but as usual, you know, you get discussion and
Yeah.
conversation, and that's pretty nice.
Yeah,
So,
no, that's great, and certainly that amazing trip that you guys just were on. So that was really fun.